The grandeur of ancient Egypt has fascinated historians, archaeologists, and the public for centuries. Its monumental architecture, intricate religious beliefs, and complex political systems continue to capture imaginations worldwide. Central to this civilization's history are the pharaohs, the kings who ruled with absolute power and were considered divine beings on earth. Yet, behind many of these great rulers stood influential women, especially their wives, who played crucial roles often overlooked in historical narratives. Pharaoh's wives were not merely royal companions or decorative figures. They were often key political allies, religious leaders, mothers of heirs, and sometimes rulers themselves. Their influence extended into multiple spheres, including governance, diplomacy, and sacred rites. Despite this, the stories of these royal women are frequently overshadowed by those of their husbands and have remained hidden or simplified in popular culture. This exploration seeks to uncover the hidden story of Pharaoh's wives, revealing their true importance in shaping Egypt's history. By understanding their roles and influence, we gain a richer, more balanced picture of ancient Egyptian society that recognizes the power and agency of these remarkable women. The role of Pharaoh's wife in ancient Egypt. The title of Pharaoh's wife encompassed a range of responsibilities and significance. Though often reduced to queen in casual discussion, the role was defined by elaborate titles and a complex set of duties that combined political, religious, and familial functions. Titles and status. The highest-ranking wife was known as the Great Royal Wife, Chemtins Tibur Talti. This designation distinguished her from other wives and concubines and marked her as the pharaoh's principal spouse. The Great Royal Wife held a prestigious place in the royal household and court, often participating in official ceremonies and religious events. Several other titles emphasized the queen's elevated status. King's Wife, HMT, NSWT, a general term for any wife of the pharaoh. Lady of the Two Lands, NBT T3WY, a royal title symbolizing dominion over both Upper and Lower Egypt. King's Sister, SNT NSW, or King's Daughter, S3T NSWT, titles denoting royal bloodlines, which often intersected through marriage to preserve dynastic purity. God's Wife of Amun, Amtantranimn, a powerful religious title granting significant authority, especially during the New Kingdom. These titles were not merely honorary, but carried real weight in the social, political, and religious hierarchies of ancient Egypt. Political influence. Pharaoh's wives were active participants in governance and diplomacy. While the pharaoh held ultimate authority, queens frequently served as advisors and played roles in statecraft. Some of the political functions performed by Pharaoh's wives included acting as regents when the pharaoh was too young or absent, effectively ruling on his behalf, influencing royal succession by ensuring the legitimacy of their children as heirs, engaging in diplomacy, especially when queens were foreign princesses brought in to secure alliances, managing royal estates and wealth, giving them economic power. Historical evidence suggests that several queens influenced or directed policies, shaped court intrigues, and sometimes wielded power comparable to that of the pharaoh himself. Religious roles. Religion was deeply intertwined with Egyptian governance, and Pharaoh's wives held sacred roles. Their participation in rituals and priesthoods reinforced the divine nature of kingship and the queen's own sacred status. The title God's Wife of Amun was especially significant. Queens who held this title managed temple properties, conducted religious ceremonies, and acted as intermediaries between the gods and the people. This position provided a power base independent of the pharaoh and often involved considerable political influence. Queens were also associated with fertility goddesses such as Hathor and Isis, symbolizing their role in maintaining the prosperity and continuation of the kingdom. Family and social responsibilities, in addition to political and religious duties, Pharaoh's wives were central to royal family life. They ensured the upbringing and education of royal children and upheld traditions vital to dynastic continuity. Socially, queens served as models of elegance, piety, and virtue, setting standards for the nobility and society at large. Their presence in festivals, banquets, and public ceremonies projected the image of a stable and prosperous reign. Historical context and evolution. The role and influence of Pharaoh's wives evolved across Egypt's millennia-spanning history, shaped by political developments, religious changes, and cultural shifts. Early dynastic period and Old Kingdom, c. 3100, 2180 BCE. In Egypt's earliest dynasties, the position of Pharaoh's wife was emerging but not yet fully defined. Evidence from tombs and inscriptions indicates that queens were primarily valued as mothers and royal companions. Their political or religious power was limited, though they held respected social status. Meneth, a queen from the First Dynasty, is one of the earliest known royal women who may have acted as regent, indicating that women could occasionally assume political authority even in this early period. Middle Kingdom, c. 2055 to 1650 BCE. The Middle Kingdom saw an increase in the visibility and roles of queens. Artistic depictions and inscriptions began to emphasize queens more prominently, and the title of Great Royal Wife became more standardized. Queens were more involved in religious life and ceremonies, and some may have exercised political influence. Behind the scenes, New Kingdom, c. 1550–1070 BCE, the New Kingdom marks a dramatic rise in the power and prestige of Pharaoh's wives. This period produced some of the most famous queens in Egyptian history, including Queen Tiye, wife of Amenhotep III, who was deeply involved in diplomacy and religious reforms. Nefertiti, wife of Akhenaten, known for her prominent role in the Imam religious revolution and possibly co-regency. Hatshepsut, originally queen and regent, who became pharaoh herself, ruling for decades with great success. During this time, the title God's wife of Amun became a major source of female religious and political power. Late period and Ptolemaic era, c. 664–30 BCE. In Egypt's later history, royal women continued to wield influence. Under the Ptolemaic dynasty, queens like Cleopatra VII transcended traditional roles by ruling as pharaoh in their own right. The blending of Egyptian and Greek traditions created unique political dynamics, with queens acting as both consorts and sovereign rulers. Famous pharaohs' wives and their stories. Political alliances and diplomacy through marriage. Approx 1,500 words. Famous pharaohs' wives and their stories. Ancient Egypt's history is rich with stories of royal women whose lives and legacies have fascinated scholars and the public alike. Some pharaohs' wives rose to extraordinary prominence, wielding power in politics, religion, and culture. Their stories reveal the potential breadth of influence queens could have and provide insight into the complex nature of queenship in ancient Egypt. Queen Tiye, c. 1398–1338 BCE. Queen Tiye, wife of Pharaoh Amenhotep III, is one of the best documented royal women of the New Kingdom. Unlike many queens who remain nameless or anonymous in history, Tiye is famous for her political savvy, diplomatic involvement, and religious significance. Tiye was not of royal blood originally, the daughter of a nobleman from a relatively modest background. However, Amenhotep III elevated her to the status of great royal wife, granting her unprecedented influence. She corresponded with foreign rulers, played a key role in arranging marriages for her children to strengthen alliances, and was depicted alongside her husband in statues and inscriptions, a sign of her power and prominence. Her influence extended into religious affairs, where she was associated with the god Amun, supporting the centralization of worship in Thebes. Letters from foreign courts addressed T directly, indicating her active participation in diplomacy. Ta's example shows how a queen could rise through merit and marriage to become a powerful political and religious figure. Nefertiti, c. 1370–1330 BCE. Nefertiti, the great royal wife of Akhenaten, is one of ancient Egypt's most iconic queens. Known for her extraordinary beauty and distinctive artistic representations, Nefertiti's story is inseparable from Akhenaten's religious revolution, which shifted Egyptian worship toward the sun god Aten. Nefertiti was more than a symbolic figure. She participated actively in religious ceremonies and may have shared ruling powers with Akhenaten, possibly even ruling alone after his death for a short period. Her name means "the beautiful one has come," reflecting both her charm and status. The Amarna art style depicts Nefertiti in a position of prominence, often standing alongside the pharaoh, a rare depiction for queens of the time. Scholars debate whether she held official titles such as co-regent or pharaoh, but her influence in the religious and political upheaval during Akhenaten's reign is undeniable. Hatshepsut, c. 1507–1458 BCE. Perhaps the most extraordinary example of a pharaoh's wife rising to supreme power is Hatshepsut. She began as the great royal wife of Thutmose II and regent for her stepson, Thutmose III. However, she soon took on full pharaoh status herself, ruling Egypt for over 2 decades with remarkable success. Hatshepsut adopted all the royal regalia and titles traditionally reserved for male pharaohs, including the false beard and the name Matkare. She commissioned impressive building projects, including her famous mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri, and led expeditions that expanded Egypt's trade networks. Her reign challenged traditional gender roles and demonstrated that women could rule effectively at the highest level. Despite attempts after her death to erase her legacy, modern archaeology has restored Hatshepsut's place as one of Egypt's greatest rulers, Cleopatra VII, 69–30 BCE. The last pharaoh of Egypt, Cleopatra VII, is the most famous queen in Egyptian history due to her dramatic life and political skill. Cleopatra was a Ptolemaic ruler of Macedonian Greek descent who embraced Egyptian traditions to legitimize her reign. Cleopatra was known for her intelligence, multilingual abilities, and diplomatic talent. She formed strategic alliances with powerful Roman leaders Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, using her charm and political acumen to protect Egypt's independence amid Rome's expanding empire. Her story ends tragically with her defeat and suicide, marking the end of both the Ptolemaic dynasty and ancient Egyptian rule. Cleopatra's legacy remains one of the most captivating narratives of female power and tragedy in history. Other notable pharaohs' wives: Nefertari, wife of Ramses II, known for her beautifully decorated tomb in the Valley of the Queens, and her status as a beloved queen. Meritaten, daughter and wife of Akhenaten, who may have acted as a regent. Ankhesenamun, wife of Tutankhamun, involved in royal succession after the Amarna period. These women and many others illustrate the diversity of roles and impacts pharaohs' wives had across Egypt's history. Political alliances and diplomacy through marriage in ancient Egypt was not solely a personal or family matter, but a significant political tool. Pharaohs' wives were often at the heart of diplomatic strategies designed to secure alliances, peace, and influence both within Egypt and with neighboring powers. Foreign princesses as pharaohs' wives throughout Egypt's history, especially During the New Kingdom, it became common practice for pharaohs to marry foreign princesses. These marriages were diplomatic gestures to cement peace treaties or alliances with powerful neighboring kingdoms such as Mitanni, Hatti, Babylonia, and Nubium. For example, Amenhotep III married several foreign princesses, including those from Mitanni and Babylonia. These wives brought with them their own entourages and cultural influences, serving as living symbols of Egypt's foreign relations. They helped to stabilize fragile political arrangements and enhanced Egypt's prestige abroad. These foreign queens were often given titles equal to Egyptian queens, such as Great Royal Wife or Secondary Queen, and participated in court life. Their presence illustrates Egypt's openness to international diplomacy and the role of marriage in it. Domestic political alliances. Marriage within the royal family was also a strategic tool to preserve dynastic legitimacy. Pharaohs often married sisters, daughters, or half-sisters to consolidate power and maintain pure royal bloodlines. This practice sometimes ensured that queens had royal lineage, strengthening the status of their offspring as legitimate heirs. Such marriages reinforced internal political stability and prevented rival claims to the throne by other branches of the royal family or powerful nobles. Queens as diplomatic intermediaries, pharaohs' wives were not only pawns in marriage alliances, but active participants in diplomacy. They sometimes acted as ambassadors or intermediaries, communicating with foreign courts or hosting foreign dignitaries. Their knowledge of multiple languages and customs enabled them to bridge cultural gaps. Their presence in political negotiations could humanize and smooth tense relations, offering a softer diplomatic touch. Marriage and peace treaties. Royal marriages were often integral parts of peace treaties. A marriage alliance would symbolize the end of hostilities and the beginning of cooperation. This was particularly important during periods of military conflict or competition for resources. The famous Amarna letters, a cache of diplomatic correspondence from the 14th century BCE, include references to marriage proposals and alliances involving pharaohs' wives and foreign princesses, showing how marriage functioned as a formal political instrument, economic and cultural exchange beyond politics. These marriages facilitated economic and cultural exchanges. Foreign queens introduced new fashions, religious practices, and art styles to the Egyptian court. They sometimes sponsored temples or brought new religious ideas that merged with traditional Egyptian beliefs. This cultural blending enriched Egyptian society and broadened its international connections. Religious significance, archaeological discoveries and evidence, common myths and misconceptions, approx. 1,500 words. 6. Religious significance of Pharaoh's wives' religion was the lifeblood of ancient Egyptian society, deeply intertwined with governance, culture, and daily life. Pharaohs themselves were considered divine or semi-divine figures, living gods on earth, intermediaries between the gods and the people. Within this framework, Pharaoh's wives were not only consorts, but also vital religious figures who embodied divine feminine power and contributed to maintaining cosmic order, known as Ma'at. The divine role of the queen. The queen was often regarded as the earthly counterpart to goddesses such as Hathor, Isis, and Mut. These deities represented motherhood, fertility, protection, and power, qualities associated with the queen's role as mother of the heir and protector of the kingdom. Pharaoh's wives were seen as essential to ensuring the fertility of the land, the prosperity of the people, and the continuity of the royal bloodline. God's wife of Amun, one of the most powerful religious titles held by Pharaoh's wives, was God's wife of Amun, Shem-Tnt-N-Imn. This title emerged during the New Kingdom and was particularly significant in Thebes, the religious capital of Egypt. The role of God's wife of Amun was not merely ceremonial. Queens holding this office managed vast temple estates, commanded considerable wealth, and performed key rituals in the cult of Amun, one of Egypt's most important gods. The position provided a semi-independent power base, sometimes rivaling the pharaoh's authority, especially during periods of political fragmentation. These queens were responsible for rituals that renewed the pharaoh's divine mandate, including symbolic marriage ceremonies to the god Amun, reinforcing the sacred bond between the royal family and the divine. The position also involved participation in festivals, temple inaugurations, and daily rites performed within temple complexes. Participation in religious ceremonies. Beyond the God's wife title, Pharaoh's wives regularly participated in religious festivals and ceremonies that emphasized their sacred role. They were often depicted in temple reliefs, performing rituals alongside the pharaoh, such as offerings to gods, purifications, and prayers. Some queens served as priestesses for specific cults, including those of Hathor, the goddess of love, and motherhood, and Isis, the goddess of magic and protection. These roles underscored the queen's spiritual authority and her function as a mediator between gods and people. Symbolism and divine legitimacy. The religious status of the queen was also crucial for legitimizing the pharaoh's rule. As mother of the heir and partner to the divine king, the queen was a symbol of fertility and continuity. Many temple inscriptions and statues emphasize her role in supporting the pharaoh's divine nature and securing the prosperity of Egypt. 4. Example: statues of Queen Taye and Nefertiti show them adorned with divine symbols, such as the solar disk or uraeus, cobra, highlighting their sacred status. Their presence in religious art served to reinforce the unity between the royal family and the gods. Archaeological discoveries and evidence. Our knowledge of Pharaoh's wives, their roles and influence comes primarily from archaeological discoveries. Tombs, temples, statues, inscriptions, and artifacts unearthed over the past 2 centuries. These findings have helped reconstruct the lives of royal women and correct many misconceptions. Tombs and burial sites. The tombs of Pharaoh's wives are among the most important sources of information. Located primarily in the Valley of the Queens, near Luxor and other burial grounds, these tombs vary in grandeur, reflecting the status of the queens. Queen Nefertari's tomb, perhaps the most famous, Nefertari's tomb, QV66, is renowned for its exquisite wall paintings depicting her journey to the afterlife and her relationship with gods such as Osiris and Hathor. The tomb's decoration reveals her status, piety, and the religious beliefs surrounding death and the afterlife. Tomb of Queen Taye. Though her exact burial site remains debated, artifacts associated with Taye, including statues and funerary objects, provide insights into her prominence and religious roles. Tombs of lesser-known queens. Excavations have uncovered tombs of secondary wives and princesses, offering a broader picture of royal women's lives and status. These burial sites contain inscriptions and iconography that document titles, lineage, and religious beliefs, allowing historians to trace the evolution of queenship. Statues and sculptures. Statues of Pharaoh's wives found in temples and palaces provide valuable clues about their importance. Large-scale statues, such as those of Nefertiti and Taye, emphasize their regal presence and divine attributes. The Amarna period introduced more naturalistic and intimate portrayals of queens, especially Nefertiti, who is famously depicted in the iconic painted limestone bust discovered in Amarna. This bust reflects both artistic innovation and the queen's elevated status. Smaller statues and figurines found in tombs and shrines often served religious or protective purposes and illustrate the queen's role in domestic and spiritual life. Inscriptions and reliefs. Temples and monuments contain numerous inscriptions and reliefs depicting pharaohs' wives engaged in religious rituals, court ceremonies, or symbolic acts of power. These images reinforce their divine connections and political roles. For example, in the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut at Deir el-Bahri, reliefs depict the queen undertaking building projects, receiving divine sanction and asserting her kingship. Diplomatic correspondence, such as the Amarna letters, include references to queens in political and familial contexts, illustrating their role in international affairs. Artifacts and jewelry, personal items such as jewelry, ceremonial objects and clothing. Fragments reveal the status, wealth and tastes of pharaohs' wives. These artifacts often incorporate religious symbolism and showcase fine craftsmanship. Jewelry with motifs of gods and protective symbols reinforced the queen's sacred role and were believed to provide spiritual protection. Common myths and misconceptions. Despite the growing body of archaeological and historical evidence, pharaohs' wives remain surrounded by myths and misconceptions, fueled by popular culture, early historiography, and incomplete interpretations. Myth 1. Pharaohs' wives were passive or decorative. One widespread misconception is that queens were mere ornamental figures with no real power or influence. This stereotype has been popularized by Hollywood films and simplistic historical accounts. In reality, many pharaohs' wives exercised substantial political, religious, and cultural power. Queens like Tiye, Nefertiti, and Hatshepsut demonstrate that royal women could be influential leaders, advisors, and even sovereign rulers. Myth 2. Pharaohs' wives were always Egyptian. While many queens were Egyptian, especially princesses married to pharaohs to keep royal bloodlines pure, foreign princesses frequently became pharaohs' wives as part of political alliances. These queens brought their own cultures and customs, influencing Egyptian society and diplomacy. The assumption that pharaohs' wives were homogeneously Egyptian obscures the complexity of Egypt's international relations and court dynamics. Myth 3. Pharaohs' wives were villainous or scheming. Another persistent trope depicts royal wives as manipulative, jealous, or dangerous figures seeking power at any cost. This characterization often oversimplifies or misinterprets historical and mythological narratives. While court politics were undoubtedly complex and sometimes ruthless, many queens acted responsibly to maintain stability, continuity, and prosperity. Their actions should be understood within the context of preserving the kingdom and dynasty, rather than simplistic villainy. Myth 4. Pharaohs' wives had no independent religious authority. Some believe queens were only passive participants in religion, while the pharaoh held all divine authority. However, titles like God's wife of Amun and evidence of queens' priestly roles show that they had independent religious power, managing temples and performing sacred rituals. Myth 5. Pharaohs' wives were always secondary to pharaohs, although pharaohs were the central figures of power. Queens sometimes held authority equal to or surpassing that of their husbands. Hatshepsut's reign as pharaoh and Nefertiti's possible co-regency illustrate exceptions that challenge the idea of queens as subordinate. Pharaoh's wife in society and culture. Women's power compared to other civilizations. Impact on modern understanding, approx 1,500 words. Pharaoh's wife in society and culture. Pharaohs' wives were not only political and religious figures, but also cultural icons who influenced many aspects of Egyptian society. Their presence extended beyond the palace into art, fashion, literature, and social norms, shaping how the elite and common people perceived royal authority and femininity. Cultural influence and fashion queens set trends in clothing, jewelry, hairstyles, and makeup that became models for women across Egypt. Artistic depictions in tomb paintings, sculptures, and reliefs provide evidence of their distinctive styles. For example, the elaborate wigs, beaded collars, and eye makeup worn by queens like Nefertiti and Cleopatra became symbols of royal elegance. Their fashion choices often incorporated religious symbolism, such as the solar disk crown representing the goddess Hathor, or the Uraeus serpent symbolizing royal protection. These adornments communicated their divine connection and political authority. Artistic patronage, Pharaoh's wives were patrons of art and architecture. Many commissioned temples, monuments, and tombs that celebrated their status and piety. For instance, Queen Hatshepsut's mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri is a masterpiece of Egyptian architecture, reflecting her political and religious ambitions. Their patronage helped advance Egyptian art styles, from the classical formality of Old Kingdom art to the more naturalistic and expressive Amarna style, associated with Akhenaten and Nefertiti. Literature and poetry. Though few literary works are directly attributed to Pharaoh's wives, ancient Egyptian texts often mention queens in hymns, prayers, and poems praising their beauty, wisdom, and virtue. These writings reinforced the ideal qualities expected of royal women and propagated their divine status. Stories and myths involving queens also circulated, blending history with legend. These narratives contributed to the cultural memory of queenship and its significance. Social norms and expectations. Queenship shaped social expectations for women, especially in elite circles. Pharaoh's wives embodied ideals of motherhood, loyalty, and religious devotion, serving as role models. Their comportment in public rituals and court life influenced norms of behavior and decorum. By embodying the divine feminine, queens reinforced the patriarchal structure while also highlighting women's essential roles in family and society, symbol of national unity. Pharaoh's wives were symbols of national unity, representing both Upper and Lower Egypt and embodying the kingdom's cohesion. Their marriages sometimes connected different regions or ethnic groups, promoting internal harmony. Their participation in state ceremonies, such as coronations and festivals, visually expressed the unity of Egypt under the divine kingship. 1. Women's power in ancient Egypt. Compared to other civilizations, ancient Egypt stands out in the ancient world for the relatively high status and power women could achieve, especially royal women. When compared to contemporary civilizations, Egyptian queens enjoyed levels of authority and independence that were exceptional. Political authority. While many ancient societies restricted women from formal political power, Egyptian queens could rule as regents, co-regents, or even sole monarchs. Hatshepsut's reign as pharaoh is a striking example of female political authority, unmatched in most neighboring civilizations. In Mesopotamia or Greece, for instance, royal women rarely ruled, directly and often operated through male relatives. Egyptian queens' ability to assume titles and exercise governance reflects a more flexible political culture. Religious roles. Egyptian queens' religious authority, particularly as God's wife of Amun, was unparalleled. In most other ancient societies, priestly roles for women were limited or symbolic, but Egyptian queens managed temple estates and performed significant rites. This religious power bolstered their political influence and social status, intertwining sacred and secular authority. Legal rights. Women in ancient Egypt had legal rights to own property, inherit wealth, and initiate divorce, which was uncommon elsewhere. Queens, as members of the royal family, exercised these rights, on a grand scale, managing estates and wealth independently. Such legal autonomy provided queens with economic power that supported their political and religious roles. Marriage and succession. Egyptian royal marriages sometimes involved sibling or close kin unions to preserve dynastic purity, a practice not unique but closely controlled. Queens often held the critical role of mother to the heir, and their status depended heavily on producing legitimate successors. In contrast, in many other cultures, queenship was less formalized, and power was often more diffused among noble families. Cultural respect and representation. Artistic and literary representations of queens emphasize respect, dignity, and divine attributes, highlighting the cultural esteem accorded to royal women. This contrasts with some other ancient cultures where female rulers or consorts were portrayed ambivalently or negatively. G. Impact on modern understanding of ancient Egypt. The study of Pharaoh's wives has significantly reshaped modern perceptions of ancient Egypt, challenging simplistic narratives and highlighting the complexity of gender, power, and religion in one of history's great civilizations. Re-evaluation of gender roles, recognizing the political and religious power of queens, challenges earlier assumptions that ancient Egypt was strictly patriarchal with men as sole rulers. The examples of female pharaohs and powerful queens demonstrate a more nuanced gender dynamic where women could hold and exercise authority. This re-evaluation informs broader discussions on women's history and gender in antiquity. Historical accuracy and balance. Incorporating the stories of Pharaoh's wives provides a more balanced historical account that includes both men and women as active agents. It corrects centuries of male-centric historiography and enriches our understanding of ancient Egyptian governance and society. Influence on Egyptology. Archaeological discoveries related to queens, tombs, inscriptions, art have been pivotal in Egyptology's development. These findings help reconstruct court life, religious practices, and political history. Queens like Nefertiti and Hatshepsut have become central figures in Egyptological research and popular culture, fueling interest and scholarship. Cultural legacy and popular imagination. Pharaoh's wives continue to captivate the modern imagination, inspiring books, films, and art. Their stories embody themes of power, beauty, intrigue, and tragedy, while popular portrayals sometimes simplify or romanticize their lives. Ongoing research strives to present a more accurate and respectful picture. Lessons for modern society. Studying the roles of Pharaoh's wives offers insights into how women have shaped history, even in male-dominated societies. Their ability to navigate complex political, religious, and social landscapes provides valuable lessons on leadership, resilience, and influence. Final insights and conclusion. Approx. 1,500 words. 12. Continued influence of Pharaoh's wives in later periods as Egypt transitioned through the late period, Persian conquest, and then the Ptolemaic era. The role of Pharaoh's wives continued to evolve. Though political power fluctuated with shifting dynasties and foreign rulers, queens maintained religious and cultural importance. The Ptolemaic queens, descended from Macedonian Greeks, embraced Egyptian traditions of queenship and portrayed themselves as reincarnations of goddesses such as Isis. Cleopatra VII, the most renowned, combined Hellenistic and Egyptian identities, using her royal status and alliances with Roman leaders to assert political influence. Even as Egypt's sovereignty waned, the symbolic and religious authority of queens endured, reflecting the deep cultural roots of female power in Egyptian history. Female agency and power dynamics in ancient Egypt. The stories of Pharaoh's wives underscore the complex dynamics of female agency in an ancient society often perceived as patriarchal. Queens had to navigate court politics, religious expectations, and family loyalties while wielding power that was both visible and subtle. Women like Hatshepsut and Nefertiti demonstrate that female authority could challenge gender norms. though often within a framework that emphasized divine sanction and continuity of royal lineage. This duality, power granted and constrained by tradition, shaped the possibilities for queenship and female leadership, leaving a legacy still studied and admired. The modern legacy of Pharaoh's wives. The fascination with Pharaoh's wives continues today, inspiring scholarship, popular media, and cultural discourse. Their stories are not merely historical curiosities, but offer enduring lessons about leadership, gender, and cultural identity. Museums worldwide showcase artifacts associated with queens, while films and literature dramatize their lives, often blending fact and fiction. As modern perspectives evolve, there is a growing emphasis on portraying these women as complex historical figures, rather than myths or stereotypes. The study of Pharaoh's wives contributes to a richer understanding of ancient civilizations and highlights the role of women in shaping history. The hidden story of Pharaoh's wives reveals a remarkable chapter in ancient Egyptian history, one where women held significant religious, political, and cultural power. Far from being mere adornments to their powerful husbands, these queens acted as rulers, priestesses, diplomats, and cultural icons. From the influential Queen Tiye to the revolutionary Nefertiti, from the unprecedented reign of Hatshepsut to the dramatic life of Cleopatra, Pharaoh's wives shaped Egypt's history in ways that continue to resonate. Their religious roles, especially as God's wife of Amun, granted them spiritual authority that sometimes rivaled the pharaohs themselves. Archaeological discoveries have illuminated their lives and helped dispel myths that long obscured their true significance. Their contributions challenged gender norms and redefined leadership in a male-dominated world, making them pioneers of female power in history. Today, recognizing the stories of Pharaoh's wives enriches our understanding of ancient Egypt and inspires contemporary conversations about gender, power, and legacy. Their lives remind us that history is multifaceted, and women have always been central to the unfolding of human civilization.